Ed Williams, thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you here. We're going to talk a lot about you in a little bit, so could you give us just a high-level overview of who you are?
Yeah, sure. Hi, it's nice to see you. Nice to speak to you. I'm Ed Williams. I head up the pen test team at Level Blue. I've been at Level Blue for, Trustwave Level Blue for 10 years. Prior to that, I was a principal security consultant at NCC. And before that, I was a Unix admin programmer.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Ed.
My pleasure.
Well, let's get right into it. We're going to ask you some questions and get to know about you and how you got where you're at today. So the first question is, when did you first start your interest in just computers in general?
So my dad, it probably starts like many people. So I'm 47. So we had a BBC Micro in the house that my dad bought. That was a massive brick. And it had a book like that thick, sort of programming basic. And I just used to go through that and just program circles. And as you go through the book, it gets more advanced.
Yeah, drawing shapes.
Yeah. It was brilliant. I loved it. So I just would go through that book religiously and just learn how to program simple syntax. And that was the start of it, really. So I was probably 8 or 9. I've got an older brother who had no interest in computers, so it was my machine that I could do with what I want.
Oh, nice. And what kind of machine you said it was?
It was a BBC. I don't think you had them in the US. It was a UK thing.
And okay, so the brand is called like the news channel, or?
Yeah, BBC Micro.
So were they related, or?
No, I don't think so.
Just similar lane?
Yeah,
okay,
and
cool.
the red function keys at the top was brilliant. A beautiful machine.
And it was like its own architecture?
Yeah,
or was it
architecture? Yeah, you had a cassette desk or tape deck to plug in your games and your code and things. It's brilliant.
I would love to see one of those one day. I'll have to look it up.
If you go on my LinkedIn profile, I think it's my backdrop. I think that's.
Oh wow! Okay, cool. I'll take a look. Very cool. And yeah, I remember doing the exact same thing. For me, it was with BASIC as well. That's what you said, right? BASIC.
Yeah.
Just trying to do something useful with it, but I never was able to. Just drawing, like you said, circles and triangles and things like that, but nothing that exciting.
It was pretty good actually. It got me into like maths and geometry that I didn't really understand until I studied it later. So it was really useful in that respect.
Yep. Did you guys have logo writer?
No,
with the kernel? No. Okay. I remember spending a lot of time with that one. Well, let's shift into how you got interested in cybersecurity now.
So I did a degree in computer science, and it was a really heavy Unix C degree. There was lots of system programming, lots of Unix type modules, and part of that, inherently is cyber. So I was very fortunate. I did my degree, and where I studied in Glamorgan in Wales, they were one of the first 2 universities to offer a cyber degree.
Nice.
And I was really fortunate that I had funding for it, because I did my sort of final year project was related to security, and then I had funding for that then, and I did that for a year. So I did a master's degree then in, as it was then, information security. So before the word cyber, it was InfoSec. That's all.
Oh yeah. Yep. And I think for me at the beginning there was no name actually. You're just a computer guy.
Yeah, admin.
Very cool. What were you using back then when you were learning computer security, like the kind of tools and techniques back then? Just curious.
So this predates a lot of the tooling. I think there was an early version of Nmap knocking around. Cain and Abel was brand new. So
open source Nessus.
Yeah, open source Nessus. So some real old school tooling. And I, in my degree, I did a lot of C, and I sort of then started using Perl before Python became a thing. So you'd write a lot of your own tools. So within the classes that we had was, right, here's an old bit of infrastructure, create some tooling to sort of rampage around that. So there's a lot of Perl-based stuff that I was writing. And just learning and just absolutely loving it. I got, for about 4 or 5 years, I was absolutely obsessed. I didn't want to talk about anything else. I didn't want to do anything else than just hack machines. That's all I wanted to do.
Nice. Did you have that same problem with Perl where you would write stuff and then come back to it 6 months later and it's really hard to understand?
So, as is my way, I got a bit obsessed. So we used to play what they call Perl golf. So you would
really?
try and factor your code so it'd be unreadable. So the more unreadable, the better the code would be. So I would spend hours rereading or trying to understand what I was doing because I'd factored it down to such a degree. And then when I moved over to Python, it was a lot easier. It was a good.
Oh, yeah. It's a completely different world.
Yeah, but I at the time, because I was a big C programmer, and there's a lot of overhead with that. So it was good to be a Perl programmer and do sort of system type thing. So I could, I wouldn't lose too much speed, but I could just a lot easier.
What kind of thing did you build in C?
So in uni we did a mini kernel. That was one of the first projects that we did.
Nice.
We had to read, write ls, an ls command with all its.
Really?
So yeah, just a lot of cool things. We did a remote bash. That when I look back, that must have been really, really insecure. but that was cool.
That's quite a bit. A full shell, a file system.
Yeah. No, it was a really heavy Unix degree. I didn't realize at the time that there was another world, like sort of Windows was just coming up. Because there was a time as well when Windows was a joke in terms of security, and I was heavily on the bandwagon for that.
When do you mean? When you say, like, I know, like 3.1 and 95 and XP.
95 really was, they were really bad. The security was awful. There was so many bugs. It was bad, but fun.
I remember the Microsoft SDL program came around that time. That's when it all changed.
Yeah, there was a memo, wasn't there, that changed everything.
Exactly. Yeah, they started fuzzing. They started, doing everything they should be doing.
Yeah.
Very cool. This one is my favorite question. What is the coolest hack, or one of the coolest hack you've pulled off that you can talk about without naming anybody, obviously?
Yeah, so there's a few, but the one, I'll give you the quickest hack that I ever did, because it sticks in my memory. So we were doing some infrastructure, and the first thing that I always do is try and enumerate the users through like RID cycling. Yeah. And you would do that, and it would just pop up like the RID 500 account was administrator, and there was a comment next to it. First thing I would always do on an infrastructure test. I was thinking, what's that comment? It looks like a password. So I just tried it, and it was the domain admin password.
Wow.
And it was in the comment section, readable for anybody on the network.
And where was the username and comment from?
So somebody set the password, and they just put it. Yeah, it was on the domain control.
Okay. Oh wow!
So it was crazy. That was crazy. So it just proved to me, and that's quite early in my career. It just proved to me that you should always check everything, always, because you just do not know what people are up to.
Right.
So that was the easiest one that I ever did. So that was from literally plugging in a network port to getting domain admin in probably 20 seconds, and 3 sort of strokes of a keystroke, so it's very straightforward. The cool ones, I think
that might be a record, Ed. I've not heard about sub 1 minute yet. So
that was cool. I did enjoy that. But the cool ones were where I always thought we could join sort of multiple vulnerabilities together, or if it's social engineering, you could get a foothold into, like, we used to do a lot of banks back in the day, social engineering, get some sort of mailbox or foothold, and then get yourself into the building. Those were always cool. So I did a few of those with other members of the team, because you could really show the impact. Like, it's cool when you do a massive report and it's super, super technical, but when you can add that social engineering physical part to it as well, it really sort of raises the awareness within the business. And, we did one where we took a picture. We were in the CEO's office. We got from the outside inside. So we done, hackers are like, they're always sort of bending the rules. But there's loads of cool stories. But I always remember the domain admin password in 20 seconds and the ability to go from literally sitting outside what looks like a secure building and getting inside and doing something malicious.
Nice. I think a lot of people would be interested to hear more about the bank stuff. Can you tell us a little bit more about like how you approach this and just some interesting stuff people might not know about.
Yeah, so basically it was.
See how your last pen test vendor stacks up against Turbo Pen Test for free. Most companies trust their pen test reports, but how do you know what was missed? Upload or share your previous pen test report, and Turbo Pen Test will compare it against our advanced agentic pen testing platform. You'll see what your previous vendor caught and what they didn't. Plus, you'll receive a free pen test from Turbo Pen Test to validate your security. See how your last pen test really performs. Compare it now.
It was probably before the term red teaming was actually a thing. So we were given sort of not carte blanche, but sort of right. You've
Wide
scope.
Wide scope. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of time as well. I always go back. The more time you have, the more sort of prepared and professional you can be. So we would spend, 2 or 3 weeks scoping the building, doing a OSINT, doing all the stuff that you would do, and you could see that people coming in and out at certain times and all that type of stuff. So we would do our OSINT. We could get the reception email address, and we could see who the receptionist was. And it's normally some kindly old woman who's really wants to be helpful. Well, really, they should be a gatekeeper, but their sort of job is to be helpful. So if you can send an appropriate email, make it look good, and say we're going to do some, fire drills or something. Fire extinguishers is a good one. Then you've got to go then and buy all the kit and all the hard hat and all that stuff, and then you send it with enough notice. Like there's some businesses in the UK that are sort of proper fire extinguisher type test businesses. So we would sort of masquerade, spoof emails when it was a bit easier to spoof email addresses. So we do that. So we get the reception, say we're going to be there in, put in a date that's like 3 weeks, so it's not too crazy. And you just double check, are we still okay to come in? Have the fire extinguishers been tested? Have they been used recently? Make it look like that. Then you come in, you'd introduce yourself, they'd escort you to the fire extinguishers, and then at any sort of network jack point, you plug in, see if you can get an IP address, run responder, or whatever, and then you're up and running. So it's cool. And once you sort of get into that initial behind the doors, the security peels back pretty quick, as you know.
Yeah, because the humans basically are in charge at that point.
Yes.
They're
because what you're doing, you're relying on somebody to be helpful, to do their job effectively. It's not their job to stop people. It's their job to sort of get people to the right places. So you're relying on that. And I think trying to be not too confrontational helps. And things like that.
Yeah, sure. That's true no matter what you're doing, I guess. Social engineering or not, you're gonna get better mileage when you're nice.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a good rule of life.
Yep, awesome. Next thing is, what's your favorite type of security testing and why? Because there's many different types, right? You just talked about a few: physical, hardware, web, network.
Yeah, so I'd probably cut my teeth on infrastructure type testing. So probably my heart always belongs there. What I do like about it is the scope. Like you get some infrastructure, they're absolutely massive, and this is cloud as well. Yeah. And they're varied and they're different, and there's just so much to play with. And given enough time, you can normally get your way around or through some sort of lateral movement. So I'd say probably my heart is in cloud network type stuff, but I've latterly in my career, you've got to be able to do it all. If you want to be good and competent, you've got to be a competent web tester, web app tester. So you've got to SQL injection, cross-site scripting, all those types of things. So you've got to be good at lots of different things. I think it just comes from learning and being in that environment. But I would always really sit down and enjoy a good infrastructure test.
Yeah, this field, penetration testing, sounds like it might just be focused, but it is very broad and very wide. And I agree with you. Everybody needs to know everything, but then everybody also has some strengths, right?
Yes,
that's why having different testers looking at the same thing is a good thing, because people have different mindsets.
Oh, massively. Like like I would always go for the domain controller first, good or bad. I may have locked out some domain controllers previously, but certainly I would always go there and try and do as much enumeration as possible. And I think as well, if you can get in the mind of being patient and methodical in all testing, you're going to hit the boxes and you're going to do what you need to do and find vulnerabilities and make the client more secure, because ultimately that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, planning goes a long way, right?
It does.
Can you speak a little bit about that? Like, what do you think about planning before a pen test, and what are some of the things people should do?
Oh, so you should, there's an expression, isn't there, Abraham Lincoln? If you had a week to cut a tree, you'd spend 6 days sharpening his axe or something like that.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. The more you can plan, the better. And the planning might be some sort of open source intelligence, maybe, or it might just come down to making sure your tooling is all up to date and you know what you're doing. You've got your methodology set. So, when you come to a big infrastructure or a big web application, you're mapping it out. The more time you spend mapping it out, understanding what the environment looks like, which is planning, and then, maybe have a couple of days on that, have a sleep on it. I always think, having time to reflect on these things, and then you can go at it then and move laterally or do whatever you need to do. But planning is super important, and it'll be different for different types of tests. Like a plan that you've got for an infrastructure test might be very, very different to a plan for a red team or a web app or social engineering or something.
Yeah, I usually leave like the first part is that planning, if the test 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever it is, how am I going to use that time and how am I going to spread that coverage, right? Because you can't cover everything.
Correct.
So you have to manage your time wisely and not get stuck in one place. I learned that the hard way when, initially I would like maybe get stuck and like poke at something for way too long and then miss everything after. So when I learned just go broad first, and then you'll probably find better leads to focus on. And just like you said, put it down and come back later. Give yourself a budget.
I think that comes with experience as well. Like you know what to prod at and how long to prod. And, unfortunately, we're all going to do the reporting. If you can report as you're going along, it creates a better product, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But we've all been there. Oh my God, last day I've got to do a lot of reporting because you've had so much fun doing the other stuff. So it is difficult, but I think it comes with experience and knowing what you're there for.
I think that's an internal fight for all pen testers always. Everybody knows you have to write as you go, and things go way better when you do. And sometimes, like you said, you get too much into something, and then the reporting comes at the end, and that's never fun.
One cool thing I remember doing is trying to DOS. It was like an old SMTP server, and I was just convinced, and I was writing loads of code to try and create some sort of bug there, and I just couldn't get it to fire properly, and the service would fall over, then it would come back up, and it was like a test type box. But I must have wasted a day and a half, and in the end, it didn't yield any results. It just I just wasted effectively a day. So I made up some sort of issue around it, but you've got to be careful with your time. Time management is key.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. That's great advice and thoughts. Actually, this is somewhat similar. What is something you think everyone can do so they can get better security testing results? And that could be either business owners or pen testers. Something people can do to get better results from security testing.
So when I think back to my career and things that have sort of slowed down progress, one I remember was asking for network diagrams. I remember being really naive, again, early in my career, saying, can I get a network diagram just to see what I'm up against? And the individuals there, you're the hacker, you're the pen tester, you figure it out. I was like, right, okay, I can do that, and I'll map the network and do that. So I think pen testing or any sort of assurance work, offensive security, whatever you want to call it, it's a partnership. So if you want to work together, because you both want the same thing ultimately, is you want the ability to make the organization more secure. So if you can work with them to make sure that you get a better outcome, I think that's probably something that I would try and get organizations do is to not see it as adversarial, but see it as this is a partnership. We want to work together.
Yeah.
What does happen though is you inevitably find a lot of issues, and that just creates work for somebody. So it's like you're calling their baby ugly, effectively, unfortunately. So you've got to sort of massage egos as well as you're going along, because that isn't helpful sometimes.
Yep. Very cool. Next one is actually probably the hottest topic right now, AI. How are you using AI in your work today?
So this is something we get asked about all the time. How are we using it? So firstly, are we using it? How are we using it? Are we using it securely? So we've taken a slightly slower probably approach to AI usage. Like, I'm a big believer in technology probably underestimates what's going to happen in the short term, but overestimates what's going to happen in the sort of medium to long term. So while I think AI is definitely a thing, and we see it being more of a thing every day, we as sort of security people need to be a bit more conscious of the other side of it. So we started using it for reporting, password cracking, things like that. We have just started an initiative where we're trying to roll certain parts of AI optimization into our sort of normal processes. So we're doing that literally as we speak. So that's what's happening in the short term. I think in the long term, I don't know what's going to happen, to be honest. Are more bugs going to be found? I think the bugs are there. Are they going to be found quicker? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think, I don't think you could be, right? Sure. So, yeah, I agree. I think right now, more and more code is written by AI, right? I think it's at 50, and GitHub's predicting 80% really soon, all written by AI. And, back then, before AI, when we'd test a large application, it'd be 100 to 300,000 lines of code.
Yep.
That's considered a big app. Now I can write that much in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the more code you have, the more bugs you have. So I think we already had an issue with not having enough pen testers, right, to really provide deep coverage of everything.
Yeah.
So the only way I see that we get ahead is fighting AI with AI.
Yes, I agree. I see AI as a sort of force multiplier. It's going to make good pen testers even better.
Exactly. And the bad ones even worse.
Maybe it might improve the bad ones.
Maybe a little bit, but it does accelerate you in, sometimes it can accelerate you in the wrong direction or accelerate you in the right direction.
Yeah. Like, one thing we still see is, some bugs are really hard to find. Logic bugs, privesks. You've got to really...
Authorization issues, right?
Yeah. Really hard bugs. You've got to spend a lot of time. So I don't think AI in the short term is going to find and fix those. Medium term, maybe, probably. So I think it's two things. Smart people with better tooling is going to lead for a better product.
Yeah, I think we're going to be still for the foreseeable future. I think the human is going to be what guides. You can do a fully automated test, and you can get good results out of it. And actually, now people that couldn't buy pen tests before, they can do a fully automated agentic pen test for cheap, and they got something that they couldn't get a few years ago.
Yeah.
But then if you're the enterprise, the game just totally changed, right? Because you got so much more code and everything. Yeah. That's why pen testers now need to keep up with that volume and use the tool to just be more efficient.
Absolutely.
I don't see pen testers getting replaced anytime soon, but I think it's required to basically... it's kind of like learning how to use a computer or the internet. You got to use AI now to do your job, pretty much.
Yeah, I think it is foundational. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we're on the same page. It's definitely foundational, and like I'm using AI for various different things,
everything,
agents and things, and it's cool. But you still need somebody to curate it, and at the moment, we're still not there yet.
For sure, definitely need to put some guardrails in place. And, awesome. Very cool. Again, related a little bit, but how do you see it, AI changing cybersecurity, both on the offense and on the defense?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I was thinking about this earlier. Did we know when, when the internet started in ARPANET in the 70s, could we have foreseen what that would become today? I don't think anybody would have foreseen how big the internet has become.
No.
Can
It was
we?
the information super highway back then, and if you spent more than an hour on your computer, people would say you're addicted.
Exactly.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We're interacting with the internet and we don't even realize we're doing it. So I do wonder whether in the medium to long term, it's just going to be, we can't even imagine what's going to happen, is probably how I would say it. In the short, I think I said earlier, I think we overestimate what's going to happen in the short term and underestimate what's going to happen in the long term.
Yeah.
I think that's true here. So I probably don't know what's going to happen in the medium to long term. But when you add AI, cryptocurrencies, the big hyperscalers, like everything is there for everything to change as we know it.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's going to look like. So in terms of cybersecurity, I think it's lowered the bar for attacks. I think you can create, phishing emails or something like that fairly quickly. But then, of course, you've got people defending as well. So I think that's happened. And the attackers are always one step ahead anyway. I think we can all agree on that, or certainly half a step ahead. So it's just up to us as security professionals to keep up with what's going on, whatever the new is, and making sure that we're adapting it and doing what we should be doing. But I also think as well, and I think there's a question later on about this, but I'll say now, if you concentrate on the basics of security, I don't think AI is going to make a huge amount of difference. If you've got good defense in depth, like you might get one box might get popped, but if the impact is tiny, you'll probably be okay.
It's contained.
Yeah, it's contained, exactly. So if you've got your basics, good housekeeping, good asset management, all that stuff that we talk about, I think the risk is probably as it is now.
Yeah, I think the things are pretty much the same. They're just accelerating, essentially.
Yes. Absolutely.
And actually, that's another thing that makes me think that the traditional annual compliance pen test is on the way out. Just because things change so fast and you write so much code that a year later is way too far.
Yeah, and so much has changed in the meantime. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how. I'm even thinking, initially I was thinking, well, maybe people that have, legacy system, they're not using AI, maybe it's okay for them not to use AI to test their system. But then I thought, well, the bad guys are going to do it anyway. So pretty much everybody needs to at this point. Otherwise, they're going to be falling behind.
I think so. And even if you're not moving forward, if you're standing still, you're slipping behind because everything is moving forward so quickly.
Yeah.
So yes, you're absolutely right on that point.
Yeah, there's no such thing as staying still, right? You're either moving forward or going backwards.
Exactly. And it's exciting, right? It's super exciting for us.
Oh yeah. Well, especially for pen testers, because we're passionate about learning new things, right? So
We should be.
Yeah, we got plenty of new stuff to learn. And what is a biggest misconception people have about security testing?
I think people think it's really glamorous and exciting, where it can be quite boring isn't the right word, but monotonous. Like you mentioned, you've got a massive app, you've got to check all the input validation. You've just got to grind it. I know you can automate it as well, but you've just got to grind it out. So I think probably the biggest misconception is that it is not like in the movies, I'll just burst through this firewall. That doesn't make any sense.
Except for this one time where you got the password right straight out of it
in the comments.
So that one was, but normally it's not.
No, it's very well. We have methodologies. It shows how boring it is. We have a certain number of methodologies. So boring isn't the right word, but you have to be very meticulous. You have to knock over all the bases to make sure that you're hitting the right targets and things. So I would probably say the biggest misconception is it is not as glamorous as people think.
Right.
And it can be unsocial in terms of hours. It can be, you might not get access. It can be very frustrating some points. Like there was one instance, I was doing a red team, and I'd dropped some clear text credentials in one domain that I knew was going to work on another domain. So we did our daily wash-up. So I'm just going to use these credentials in another domain. No, you can't do that. We need to get authority to do that. And you're just tearing your hair out because you're there. A hacker wouldn't say, I'm just going to wait to get permission to do that. You would just do it. Yeah. So, there's things, but every job has those types of things.
Yeah. I guess that goes back to working together and
Absolutely.
Collaborating.
Yeah.
Excellent. Next one is what's a vulnerability or attack vector you think is underestimated right now? People don't look for that enough, perhaps.
Oh, that's so good. So I was thinking about this. I always go back to the basics. Password management. I know passwords are slowly sort of being removed, but I think they'll be around for a long time. I think hygiene around passwords is still poor. Like I've been doing pen testing for, we both have for a long time, and passwords have always been a goldmine for pen testers. So I still think passwords are relevant, and I think AI now has taken sort of the oxygen out of the room and has removed what was patching passwords, good process. So the basics are always important, but I still think a good password dump is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, that makes sense. Very cool. I'm actually finding a common pattern here is like the more experienced people always go back to basics and find a lot with the basics, right?
I think, like I've got twin boys who are 12, and I tell them if you want to be good at something, you've got to be good at the basics. What makes you advanced is being good at the basics. Like I learned the hard way with my degree, and it was all fundamentals, all strict Unix fundamentals and C fundamentals. So that gave me a really good grounding of everything's a file in Unix, etc., etc. But if you can be good at the basics, you're advanced.
Yep. You understand what's going on under the hood when you're actually doing things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes it impressed me to see people pulling hacks but not really understanding them. I guess that's going to be more common now with AI, right?
I think it is. Do you remember DB Autopwn in Metasploit? You could just fire off like 40 vulnerabilities at a host.
DB Autopwn, yeah. Basically everything in your database will just fire off.
Yeah, and that is bad. Don't do that or anything like that. So I think maybe we might get to a point, as you said, I've not really thought about it, where hackers will be less technical, but maybe their coverage will be greater, and they might get better results. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. I think the tester of the future that has strong fundamentals is probably going to do better at guiding, the agent that they're using into various area of the targets.
I think you're right.
I feel the human still has a lot of advantage compared to AI, and probably going to last for a while. Because really, the stuff we're doing with AI is just a bunch of tricks, right? The LLM is just autocomplete, and then we trick it and making it more useful, and then we try to block things that are bad.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's just random at its core. Yeah. So something to make us worry a little bit.
I think you're right.
All right, the next one is if someone wants to break into cybersecurity in 2026, what would be your advice for them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what I do is I would nail the fundamentals, and you can do this on YouTube or your favorite AI, whatever. You don't have to go to university these days. Be good at the fundamentals, I think, is key, because it's going to get you, in an interview, because you're going to have to interview at some point, I guess. You don't need to know the answer, but can you sort of figure out? So you've got to be good at that. Having some sort of body of evidence around tool creation, it doesn't have to be pen testing, it could be anything, but some sort of body of evidence that you're contributing to projects would be really good, and it would impress me as somebody who hires pen testers if they've got a resume and there's contributed to GitHub, done this, that, and the other. I don't really care what it is. in some respects.
Just that they're active and
Yeah,
something.
exactly. And I think as well,
It shows they're passionate at least and put some effort.
yes, exactly. And I think be passionate. Like, nobody knows everything. And if they do,
Right.
they're lying. Well, I certainly don't. But somebody who's interested and passionate, and you say, "Oh, can you have a look at this? Give it a good go, and we'll see what happens." So just being passionate is probably 50%, and just being committed over the long term, I think, is going to get you far. So if you want to break into it, try and learn as much as you can. Get obsessed. Probably how I describe. Get obsessed for a year or two. Just consume as much as you can. And there's so many, the stuff that you're producing, so many good podcasts out there. There's no excuses. And then, just hit up as many businesses as you can.
Yeah, I think it would be really, really hard to do this work without being passionate, just because it's so much work and it's so difficult. You always have to learn.
Yeah.
It would be so difficult. So that's definitely good advice. I guess people that will become hackers kind of know because they have a drive towards doing it.
And you just keep going. But you need that on tests as well, because sometimes you're doing all this stuff and nothing's working, and then you just got to keep going. You've got to keep moving
trying. Yeah, the offset, try harder mentality.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Cool. I guess that's all the questions I had for today. Just one more question is, where can people find out more about your work and follow you? I think you mentioned it earlier, but if you can mention it again, it'd be great.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Ed Williams. Just connect up. I'm happy to do that. I am on Twitter, Dean Llandailo. It's a Welsh word.
Does it mean dragon?
No, it doesn't mean dragon. Dragon.